Okay, you talk about wanting and needing to tell a story as a writer. What process do you use yourself before you begin to write a play? How does that work?
I sometimes would change the process. Sometimes it could be someone could just say, here's an example. I remember when I was just kind of out legging about, and we were with a lot of younger actors, and they all wanted to go to a disco, and when myself and the director were going, oh, ridiculous. We're 40, and they went, no, we're not going. We are women on the verge of HRT. And I think stopping at that moment thinking, you know, there's a great title for a play. So that inspired me to talk to people, to ask people, you know, what their experience is. So that came about that way. But the actual nuts and bolts process of that is telling the story, getting the story right, the structure right, and then starting to write it. But sometimes I wouldn't go through. Sometimes I would have like little cards, scene 1, 2, 3. It doesn't always work like that because that's quite linear, but it's like if you know your beginning, you know your middle, and you know where you want to get to at the end. It's like you can go up and down roads and in the alleyways and take shortcuts and whatever. And that's usually, I would need to have the story in my head first of all, but not fully, because you need to have freedom within that, you know, to explore different things and introduce new characters. Suddenly, you know, I'd go to bed and just close my eyes and go, oh, that's brilliant, there's a really good character, and go through their story, you know, so it's a good way of getting to sleep instead of reading my own crap.
Okay. Rock Doves is the first production of the new production company that you've started up with your husband, Ian McElhinney, Rathmore Productions. So can you tell me what was it that inspired you to actually write Rock Doves?
What inspired me to write Rock Doves? It was about, I would say, 12 years ago, and it was the 11th of July, and normally I'd be away during July, but I wasn't, and Matthew was young, 18, eight. Matthew, my son, was 8 or 9 or something, and my sister was right, and I said, look, there's the biggest bonfire in Belfast was happening down on the Craiger Road here. And I go, right son, whether you like it or not, this is your background, this is who you are, this is where you're from, this is part of the culture. And I try to explain, when your mum and I, when your Auntie Sandra and I were growing up, we loved this. This was a celebration, this was fun. It's not so much fun now, but let's go, we'll take you down. So we went down to this huge bonfire, and there was just hundreds and hundreds of people, and it was beautifully stacked, and all these pallets, and it was just like a work of art. And right at the top of the bonfire there was this young lad, about 18, 19, singing, and everybody down below was cheering and singing, and I was just watching this kid thinking, he is literally on top of the world, and everybody cheering him. He must have felt just amazing. But then they started to light the bonfire, and this wee boy would not move, and my sister and I got really panicky, and I was saying, Jesus, that child. And I said, come down, come down. He was laughing, and he was getting, like, you know, more bravado and more bravado as the flames were licking up. And I thought, oh my God, this is terrible. Then he took a mighty fly through the air and jumped, and he fell. And he fell, and he must have landed on his foot. And everybody ignored him. And I said, Jesus, Sandra, that child, that wee fella. But then I saw somebody coming over and helping up. But in the main, nobody seemed to care. I couldn't get this young lad out of my head, and I went home and I kept thinking about him. Now, what kind of, who is he? What, I mean, how much did that mean to him to be there? The next day, a good friend of mine, who was a good friend, but he was somebody who was very much involved in paramilitaries, as he was at that time. He had left, and he had become an actor. But he knew the background, and not that particular kid. And so I started to talk to him about it, and he said, keen for a day, that young lad. You see, next day he'll be crapping their boots, they'll not want to know. So we started to talk about the kind of life maybe this kid could have. So that he stayed with me for many years, until I formed the play really around the kid.
Do you feel, and you've talked about your inspiration lying in having seen that young boy at the top of the bonfire, do you think there's a message in Rock Doves? Well, there's obviously a lot of messages in it, but is there anything that you think appeals particularly to young people? Is there something this play is saying that directly would relate to young people in Northern Ireland?
I would always be very cautious about saying a play, writing a play about a message. However, I mean, for me as a writer, the main thing is I have to tell a good story and I have to entertain. And I know for young people, I want them to have empathy for a start with this young lad, the kind of life that he had, and perhaps if there is a message, it's kind of like having the ability to look out as opposed to always inward, because in the play, in a sense, the play, all the child is looking for is to belong and to have some kind of power within his life, to have and sometimes the only way to do this is to look to other people who aren't necessarily the right people to look up to. Perhaps maybe that's the message for young people. I just hope that they can be absorbed by it, entertained by it, and feel something for the young boy in my play.
You're renowned for your wit and humour as a playwright. Rock Doves would possibly be one of your darker pieces. Do you see the play as a tragedy, or how would you view it?
You see, I would see the play as, yes, it is tragic and tragic things happen, but out of that comes something positive. And I think I always need to end like that. And also I think that surviving in the midst of chaos is a positive thing. And a lot of my work would be about survival for the ordinary person, suddenly thrown into extraordinary circumstances. So yeah, I mean, it really is tragic, but I don't know, it's hard to box it really, to say it's a tragedy. It's a dark piece, but it's also very dark humour also, which it's kind of impossible to write this kind of play without, because beside these kind of people, that's the language that they communicate with each other.